Okay, class lecture number 3. I hope you're keeping up with the material. There was a lot of material in the last lecture anyway, and we've got a lot more coming at us. So your first examination will be a couple of weeks away, so you must stay up with this material. You cannot learn this overnight. It just will not happen. Last time we were together, we spent here quite a bit of time talking about the 30 Years' War, and it did last exactly 13 years, last 30 years, 1618, 1648. Mentioned to you about such individuals as the Line of the North, King Gustavus Adolphus, King of Sweden, was successful in the Battle of Breitenfeld, successful in the Battle of Lutzen, other than he lost his life there. Also, we talked about Cardinal Richelieu. I hope you recognize him. True leader of France, after the death of a good King Henry IV. And now we're going to have the Louis XIII, but the real leader is that of Cardinal Richelieu. All right, we also switched over, spent quite a bit of time with England. And after the death of Queen Elizabeth in 1603, she'll be followed by her closest relative, part of the Stuart family. This is James VI of Scotland, or better known as James I, the King of England. All right, 1603, 1625. When he died in 1625, his son, Charles I, will become king. But Charles I was no friend of the Puritans, no friend of Parliament, and we went through all of that, and you can recognize that, and eventually we're going to see that sides split. We're going to have the English Civil War, 1642, 1649, those that supported the king. Those were known as the Cavaliers. Those that supported Parliament, supported the Puritans. Those were the Roundheads. Roundheads were led by Oliver Cromwell. And war took place, fighting took place all over England, just about anyway, but eventually the Cavaliers lost and they surrendered, and we all know what happened to Charles I on January 30th, 1649. He was beheaded, and Oliver Cromwell became the Lord Protector here. All right, let's see what else have we talked about. I think in the closing parts of the class period, I think we addressed the topic here of magic. Do you believe in magic? We had two types of magic then, white magic and black magic, and that's what caused the problem, was with the black magic. This was going to lead to witchcraft, and a lot of these witch trials that would take place during that time and would later come over to the United States about 100 years later. All right, now what I want to do here, let's switch over to a different topic here. I want to go through the cultural aspect, philosophers, artists, that kind of thing that we need to discuss here in the Iron Century. And then once we get through with this, we'll spend second half of the class period, and address the topic there of absolutism. So let's go to the documents camera here, folks, and let's see what we have here. And one of the first philosophers I wish to mention to you is that of a Frenchman. All of these people, I'll show you likenesses, portraits of, small portraits of, just a little bit. But one of the individuals here is, let's learn how to pronounce his name here, folks, Michel de Montaigne, or Michel de Montaigne. He was one of the most enlightened of all the moral philosophers. That's the way to be on your examination here, to say, who is the most enlightened of all the moral philosophers in Europe for this period of time? Michel de Montaigne. I like his writings. In fact, I read some of those on occasion here, too. But he wrote one which was called Essays, and one of the principal themes of this was, que suis-je, what do I know? And actually what you know is very little, très peu. And he goes further with this, what may seem to be undeniably true to one nation is preposterous to another. I'll present that to you again. This was on his piece here called On Cannibals. What may seem to be undeniably true to one nation is preposterous to another. We all live in the United States, and we think the United States is the greatest place in the world to live, or at least some of us think so anyway. Some people do not think that. If you ask me, I would say that living in Cuba, or living in North Korea, or living in communist China, you would not be very safe places to live. But if you live in those places there, and you're in an authoritarian position, you probably think that it is a pretty good place. We think that our country is the best nation in the world. But do you think Iran feels that? Do you think Iran feels that the United States is the best country in the world? I doubt that anyway. So what may seem to be undeniably true to one group of people is preposterous to another group of people. And he also wrote another piece here. Let's see if I have it down here, folks. That was on cannibals here. And this is also in the need for tolerance. Since all people, and we all do, since all people think they know, they have the perfect religion, and all people think that they have the best government. And if everybody thinks that, and every person in the world thinks that, then is there really a true best religion? is there really a true best government? We think that it's capitalism, but other countries think that it is communism. Therefore, are you willing to give your life in defense of your own country there? All right, the need for tolerance, and that's Michel de Montaigne. All right, let's move on here, folks. Some of the other writers and philosophers of this period of time here. A Frenchman by the name of Jean Bodin. John Bodin wrote 6 books of the Commonwealth. This was one of the earliest statements of absolutism in Western Hemisphere history. And the thing about it is, I said Western European history here. And the thing is, you don't understand what absolutism right now, but you will toward the end of the class period. All right, let's move on here. And an Englishman by the name of Thomas Hobbes. Since man behaves as a monster towards other men, this means that life is very short, it's brutal, it is selfish, and it is solitary here. So life is not very good here. All right, let's move on. One of my favorite philosophers of all times is this French philosopher. All right, let's work on the pronunciation here. The French philosopher, I'll show you a likeness of him in a little bit here. Blaise Pascal. And he wrote this piece which was called Pensée. Now the word pensée translates to mean thoughts. This is a collection of informal pieces about religion. The heart has its reasons, to which reason itself knows nothing. Now for Blaise Pascal, he was a mathematician, he was a scientific rationalist, and he actually developed the world's first calculating machine. And one of the supplemental readings that we used to read through in this class, and it's not in the book today, and I don't know why it is not in the book, that disturbs me quite much, but one of the pieces that he wrote was called The Wager. And it's very good, and it's very thought-provoking here. And Blaise Pascal was a quite religious individual. I don't know whether you're religious or not, and I'm not going to tell you my feelings upon my particular views with the religion either. But he wrote this piece which was called The Wager. Is there a God? Is there a heaven? And it's a wager on whether there is a God and is a heaven. And it's like a flip of a coin. If you toss a coin in the air, the coin is going to land. It's either heads or tails. So whatever you position that you take, it's a wager. Is there a God? Is there a heaven? It's a flip of the coin here. But why don't you just take the wager and just assume that there's a God, assume that there is a heaven? What have you got to lose? If you die and there's not a God, and there's not a heaven, what have you lost? And if you do believe there's a God, and you do believe there's a heaven, there's so much to be gained with that. That's in the words of Blaise Pascal. Interesting individual. So let's go on and see some of the other individuals of this period here. All right, here. And we'll talk about some of the writers. Okay, so we're going to start up here with one of my favorite writers of all times here. And here we have it here. An individual by the name of Miguel de Cervantes. I'll show you a likeness of him in just a little bit. He wrote this wonderful book, which is called Don Quixote. And in Don Quixote, this was an exploration, if you will, of a Spanish gentleman, Don Quixote de la Mancha. Don Quixote de la Mancha. And the guy is actually delusional, if you've ever watched the movie or if you've ever seen a documentary on him anyway, and which is of upper class stock, but he envisions things, such as monsters or evil people that appear to be windmills. And actually, if you go to that area today in Spain of La Mancha, you'll see those windmills that are present everywhere. And he had his trusty sidekick that attempted to keep him out of trouble, Sancho Panza. If you get a chance to go to Madrid, and a very popular monument that they have in Madrid here shows you Don Quixote de la Mancha and his faithful sidekick here, Sancho Panza there. All right, an interesting individual there, Miguel de Cervantes. All right, let's move on here, folks. Some of the authors of the time. We had Christopher Marlowe. Now, these are English authors. Christopher Marlowe, who wrote Tamburlaine and also wrote Dr. Faustus. Ben Jonson, killed in a bar fight at an early age. Ben Jonson, who wrote Volpone, The Alchemist. And then everyone's favorite, I hope it's your favorite anyway, and I love this very much, his writings here, William Shakespeare, or you probably pronounce it William Shakespeare. His life spanned from 1564 to 1618. He wrote a number of things here. I write it out for you here: 40 plays, 150 sonnets, two long narrative poems. He was born in the area called Stratford upon Avon. Stratford upon Avon. It's a little community. It's present there today. It's on the Avon River. That's why we call it Stratford, is the name of the town, on Avon or upon Avon. And has a little Avon River that runs through. It's about like Blackwater Creek. I cannot tell how deep it is, but it's always very interesting to visit there. But for William Shakespeare, he wrote in 3 different periods of time, a time of which he had a sense of confidence. This was writing about the trials and struggles and tribulations of the Tudor family. You may be familiar with such writings here of Romeo and Juliet, As You Like It, Midsummer Night's Dream, Much Ado About Nothing, Twelfth Night. And then Shakespeare went into a period of crisis. It was a darker side of Shakespeare. And here's where some of his great writings came in this period of time. Hamlet, Macbeth, I always liked Macbeth very much, All's Well That Ends Well, and King Lear. And then finally Shakespeare wrote in his last period a spirit of reconciliation, where his writings, The Tempest, came out. All right, and all that's kind of interesting readings with that too. Let's see if I have some things here about Shakespeare. Here's a likeness here of William Shakespeare. There are many, many likenesses. I don't know if that's the true Shakespeare or not. Let's see if I have some other things here about William Shakespeare. Let me locate these for you, good folks here. And we had William Shakespeare's home. This is what it appears as. This is in Stratford upon Avon. And this is a reconstructed home here. This is not the original Shakespeare home. Has a low portal, a low doorway, so that you have to kind of stoop to get into the home. If you recognize this young lady right here, some of you may recognize her. That's my daughter. That's Miss Barbara. And she was on the trip there, much younger than she is today anyway, but stopped in at Shakespeare's home. And not very far from there, and this is the actual home of Shakespeare's wife, Anne Hathaway. And notice the thatched roof there, and very expensive, and just so characteristic of that area. All right, be sure to take the time to go over to the church there that is known as the Holy Trinity Church at Stratford upon Avon, and you can go inside the church there. That's where the bard, that's where William Shakespeare, members of his family are buried there too. Don't expect to get out free with that, because you'll have church officials there expecting you to make a little contribution to the church. So reach in your pocket and pull out a pound or two and drop it into the collection bowl there. But nevertheless, it's worth it there just to be able to say, that you were in the presence of William Shakespeare and looking over his burial site, which is he's buried into the floor of the church. So anyway, that's William Shakespeare, kind of neat there. Let's see who else we might have here. I told you earlier here, some of these individuals here. Here's Oliver Cromwell. If I can get my lighting right here, Oliver Cromwell, who is over here. There he is there. We look down below Oliver Cromwell. You can see a likeness there of Miguel de Cervantes with Don Quixote de la Mancha. Other individuals we talked about earlier today, Montaigne, or Montaigne, if you want to pronounce it that way here. Case with you, what do I know? Très peu, you know very, very little. Blaise Pascal with Panses is present here. The last time we were together, we addressed here Cardinal Richelieu. Here's a likeness here of Cardinal Richelieu. You don't want to look at my stubby finger, so I need to use my pencil there. And an individual we're going to talk about in just a second here, and this is just a likeness of him, is that of John Milton. And I cannot say that John Milton is one of my favorite writers here. It's an interesting writer, John Milton. Most of you may be familiar with his most popular book here, which is called Paradise Lost. This is a story about Satan, and Satan who lived in heaven, and Satan gets crossed up with God, and God cast him out of heaven, and he goes into Hades. All right, Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, Samson Agonistes, Lycidas. John Milton was a Puritan poet, a very, very religious individual, and a strong supporter of Oliver Cromwell, by the way. If you ever read Paradise Lost, be sure that you have your translation guide with you, what is equivalent of the Cliff Notes, because this is a very, very difficult read here. I've read it before, read it for free, just to make sure that I had that on my life list of books having read. Not one of my favorite, but it's got a good story behind it. I did not find it near as fascinating as that of Dante's Inferno. Okay, so let's see what else we have here. As we go through some of the artists of this period of time, we had a type of art which was known as mannerism. This is charm, grace, courtly behavior, if you will. Some of the best known of these writers, Tintoretto, El Greco. El Greco was responsible for many things. If you go to the Prado Museum in Madrid, Spain, you'll find a statue of El Greco, the Greek, outside of there. And there we go. He wrote, or he painted this as an example of mannerism, which is called View of Toledo. And that's the way you want to pronounce it, not Toledo. That's what we say in the United States. And a very good example here of mannerism. Now, I want you to take a look at that and look at the city there. And here's an actual photograph of Toledo. And this is a modern photograph. I took this photograph 5-6 years ago anyway. But if you look at that photograph of Toledo, and then we go back to this painting here of El Greco, you can see, look at the views and how similar they are. The city hasn't changed in many years. All right, so anyway, that's an example there of mannerism. Tintoretto was the other painter of that style. Okay, we also have another type of artistic style, which is called Baroque. This is dramatically illuminated, trying to attempt to bring out an emotional response from the viewer here. Somebody here, I'll just get this out of the way, some of the individuals that were the Baroque type artists. With Baroque, by the way, can also be architecture. It can be architecture. We can find it in music, Baroque style music, highly embellished music there. But some of the individuals here associated with this, perhaps if you've had an art history course, you know what I'm talking about. Caravaggio, Bernini, who was an architect, but he's also a painter too. Diego Velázquez, Peter Bruegel, Peter Paul Rubens, Rembrandt von Rijn, and the last one here, Judith Leister. All right, so let me share some likenesses here. You can look at these best you can. Here, El Greco again at the top here, which is St. Andrew and St. Francis. Lawakan, which is over to the other side there, that's also by El Greco. Let's see who else we have here. This is by Velázquez, Diego Velázquez, down at the bottom there, Pope Innocent X, and the Surrender of Breda, which is by Velázquez. All right, and let's see who else we might have here. Good article. I would have this out for you on display here if you were in the classroom, which is Rembrandt. Rembrandt. There. Let's see if I have some other ones here about Rembrandt. I'm not trying to make this an art class here, folks, by any means, but I always have fascination with this. And let's see who else we have here. I think I have one here by Caravaggio. And we would have this out on demonstration here on Caravaggio. Let's see who else we have here. Peter Paul Rubens. Lighting right with that, and you probably don't share in my appreciation for this, but I like it very much here. All right, let's see here, and I'll go back to my book here for a second here, see if we can put this under the screen here, and this is a likeness here, if I can get it under here, it's a likeness here of Rembrandt here, and Rembrandt, which is on this side, and then obviously this is Judith Leister, a female, in self-portrait here on the opposite side where my stubby thumb is located. All right, so anyway, those are kind of interesting characters from that period of time. Okay, so let's see what else I need to talk to you about here. And we're going to go into a second topic for today. And this is a large topic here, folks. And in fact, we'll spend a couple of lectures on it, at least 2 lectures. A lot of material, a lot of interesting things that will come out of this section here. And it's a topic which is called absolutism. And you don't understand what absolutism is at this second, but you'll get a firm grip on it very quickly here in understanding this. Absolutism, it was present from 1660, 1789. The reason we can draw this 1789 out of it, that's going to be the beginning of the French Revolution. And once the French Revolution begins, then absolutism will come to absolutism will come to a screeching halt. Now, the individual so closely associated with this period of time here, which lasted over 100 years, is that of the French king, Louis XIV. So work on your Roman numerals there, folks. We briefly mentioned Louis XIII. Last time we were together, which I told you Louis XIII was the son, if you will, of Henry IV. But he was not a very strong leader. That's Louis XIII now. And the real leader of France at that time was Cardinal Richelieu. But now we have Louis XIV. Let me show you what he looks like here, and don't laugh at Louis XIV. That's exactly what he looked like here, and I don't want to tell you everything about him right this second here because we need to go down the road a little bit before I come back to that. So I'll bring his likeness out in just a few minutes. Incidentally, if you actually see this tapestry, this painting in real life, it is unbelievable here, my friends. It covers an entire wall, and I'm talking about it's probably, maybe 18 feet high and probably, 12 feet wide. So it's a huge, huge tapestry type portrait. Anyway, we'll come back to Louis the 14th just a minute. He's the one so closely identified with absolutism. All right, so let's define absolutism. And I would write this on the dry erase board for you good folks if we were face-to-face with each other. And you may be the lucky group that is in face-to-face with me when we talk about this one. But I'm getting into next semester's knowledge right this second here, folks. All right, but what is absolutism? It is the authority that you, as a king, you have the power to make laws. You can do it on your own. You make laws here. You can control the justice. You can determine life or death for an individual. You control the government. You have the authority to declare war or to end war. You can make peace if you wish to do so. You can levy taxes on the people. You can do that if you wish to do so. And you do not have to have the approval of Parliament or the approval of the church here. So if you stop and take a good look at this definition of absolutism, what are you? You have the powers of God. That's what you are. You have the powers to make laws, control the justice, you control the government, you can declare war, end wars, you can levy taxes, you can determine who lives or not, and you don't have to ask permission from anyone. That is absolutism. And the person that demonstrates this so effectively is that of Louis XIV. It is the duty of an absolutist king to rule over his subjects and make sure his subjects are law-abiding citizens. And we do, and I say he, but we do have or will have a couple of minor absolutists that are females. But that's going to be few and far between. Now, people believed in the magic touch. Did I write it out for you? People believed in the magic touch of the king. The king had mystical healing powers, and every day this absolutist king, such as Louis XIV, would perform acts of absolutism, in which he would go with the people, maybe touch the people, heal the people by putting your hands upon them. What does it sound like? It sounds like a Christ-like individual. So people believed in the king's magic touch. Now, for Louis XIV was recognized as a sun king. He became king at 5 years of age. When you watch the documentary that's included with this instruction, it will tell you that he became king at 4 years of age when his father, Louis XIII, died. All right, so he became king. He was born in 1638, became king in 1643, and would remain as king for a long, long period of time, up until 1715 here. Obviously, during the first years of his reign, he was too young to really rule, and so other people assisted him with this until he got to be of an older age with that. People referred to him as the Sun King. They called him the Sun King. All right, and you'll see why in just a few minutes here. The Sun King. All right, now for Louis XIV, he was recognized, as I said, more clearly than any other absolutist ruler. Louis XIV strongly recognized the importance of strategic theater. Let's see if I wrote that out for you here, and I did write it out so you can see the term here, strategic theater. And this is actually designed to draw attention to yourself. Don't you think this would draw attention to yourself if you came out dressed like this? Now, if you look at him, he looks like a clown, honestly. Notice there that, and by the way, I'll just tell you this, he was 5'6", 5'6", but when you observed him in person, he appeared to be 7 feet tall. 7 feet. Look down at the bottom there, where he has a tights on, or the hose on, or whatever you want to call those. He's got 6-inch stiletto heels, and then at the top of his head, he has a 12-inch wig. 12-inch wig. And if you go through the video, and I want you to look at the video, if you read through that, watch the video, you'll see all sorts of other design styles here. And what Louis XIV encouraged was all the royalty around him to dress in a light fashion. All right, now if you go back to me, I'm casual today, and I'm not meeting you folks right now as I'm giving this lecture face to face, but I have a long sleeve t-shirt on. If we were face to face in class, and some of you will be face to face with me when I give this lecture anyway, you'll not see me in a long sleeve t-shirt. What you'll see me in, you're going to watch me in a tie. I probably won't have a coat on, even though I'll probably have a coat with me down at the college. But by wearing a tie and wearing a coat, that's strategic theater. And that's the way I dress. I dress that part. But since I'm sitting here in my office by myself, I don't see a need to dress myself up in a tie and have a blazer or a sport coat on at this point, too. I also have blue jeans on at this point. If we were face-to-face, chances are I would probably not have blue jeans on. I'd probably have, kind of a white pair, a clay pair of pants on with that. So that's all strategic theater, and we're all practitioners of it every day in the cars we drive, the houses we live in. We put on a show, we put on a pretense there, and that's what strategic theater is, and that's what Louis XIV was so very good at here. All right, so let's go here, folks, back to my camera here, and we'll get a little contrast on this. Anyway, all right, Louis XIV. All right, let's see what else I need to mention to you about this. He also... Now, understand the strategic theater that is behind this. And this is so very good here with Louis XIV. And I'm looking around for photos, and I don't see the ones I want here. But Louis XIV moved out of the royal palace in Paris. Okay? So when you're living in Paris, and you're very close to where the people are, so this is part of strategic theater. So let's move and relocate the royal palace and move it away from the Tuileries, which are in the downtown area of Paris, and we're going to go to a hunting lodge. And this hunting lodge, which is 12 miles away. So you're away from the people. The people don't see you very often. Most people don't see you very often. And he constructed this palace at 12 miles away at a place which was called Versailles. All right, so listen to my French here. Chateau de Versailles. The Chateau de Versailles, or the palace at Versailles. And here he's going to build this splendid palace. There is none finer in the entire world, my friends. Trust me on that. And when you go to France and when you go to Paris, you're going to have to take the time, take the excursion, and go out. And you can do this. You can actually take the metro and go out there. But buy your ticket and go in and tour this palace at Versailles. It is the best palace in Europe and probably the best palace in the world. Vast gardens, you have huge fountains that are present there, likenesses of Apollo. Apollo brought peace, and that is what Louis XIV is likewise going to do. Have many, many fountains that are present there. They call him the Sun King because they're images of the Sun King that are present virtually everywhere. All right, I'm going to go back here and show you. This is a booklet that came from Versailles. You can see the Sun King, the likeness up here at the top. That is, you see images of that everywhere. What you're looking at here, this is the entranceway to the royal palace itself. I don't remember, and I apologize for that, exactly how many rooms are present in that palace. It's something like 1,500 rooms are present there. Let's see if we can see this properly here. It's got a little bit of a glare on it, but that's what the Palace of Versailles looks like. That is an entire complex there, and you can wander around there easily a complete day in that area, and just only in that area. Some of you may be familiar with Maria Antoinette. Maria Antoinette lived there likewise. She was not the wife of Louis XIV, she was the wife of Louis XVI. But Maria Antoinette had her own little community, her own little town right there present in that area. Here's another view here showing you the gardens here, the vast fountains that are present there, at Versailles. That's neat place to visit. Another view here. If you were in class, I would have this out for you. We would thumb through the pages of it and try to give you an appreciation of that Palisade, Versailles. Okay, so let's go back to your documents camera here and get our lighting right, and we'll continue on for a few minutes. Yeah. Now, I don't know whether Louis XIV actually made this statement or not. It's arguable with historians. L'état c'est moi. L'état c'est moi. L'état c'est moi. I am the state. I am the state. Or in other words, if Louis XIV did say that, he is saying, I am everything. L'état c'est moi. Okay, in 1685, I don't know how religious Louis XIV was. It's always been, in my reading about him, I didn't think that he was all that religious. But in 1685, he revoked the Edict of Nantes. Now, you remember the Edict of Nantes, which came forth in the French King Henry IV, which gave a little bit of religious freedom to Huguenots. Well, in 1685, that was done, by the way, in 1598, but by 1685, Louis XIV revoked the Edict of Nantes. And I didn't write this out for you, so you'll have to write this out yourself here, my friends, but it gave all non-Catholics either of two choices. If you were a Huguenot, or if you were a non-believer, it gave you either of two choices. You have 14 days. You have 2 weeks. You have what is called a fortnight to convert to Catholicism, get out of the country. Those are your two choices. If you are not a Catholic, with the revocation of the Edict of Nantes, you have a fortnight. That's 14 days, 2 weeks, to convert to Catholicism. What's your other choice? Leave the country. Leave your country. And for my people, and I don't know if I'm real proud of this, but I have French heritage, and I'm not so proud of that. But for my French side, they actually left France and they went to Scotland. Now, I'm proud of being Scot. I'm proud of being Irish, and a little bit so of being English, But the Welsh and the Irish and the Scot, that's what I am proud of in my family. But I can't deny the fact. DNA testing has shown me, it's proven to me, that I am part French too. But my family there, the Petillo family, actually left France under the revocation of the Edict of Nantes, and we went to Scotland. All right. So anyway, back we go here, folks. And another individual I want you to get familiar with is a French minister. He was finance minister, 1664, 1683. All right, you want to pronounce this as Jean-Baptiste Colbert. Jean-Baptiste Colbert. And he worked very well with Louis XIV. And when Colbert became the finance minister, only 20% of the taxes that were being taken from the French people actually made their way to the federal treasury. And by the time he left in 1683, 80% of the taxes that were collected by the people actually made their way into the federal treasury. He was a practitioner of mercantilism. I want you to recognize this. I would ask you at this time here, class, how many of you folks work? And probably a number of you work, and you're a capitalist. You work, maybe selfishly, to get money for yourself, so you can pay for your car, pay for your house, or whatever you want. Pay for a nice lifestyle. And that is capitalism. But under mercantilism, it's very different than that. Under mercantilism, the nation is the principal benefactor, not the individual here. Everything should go to the nation. We should protect our valuable resources, but use our resources that we have within the country. Don't buy abroad. If you can manufacture things within your country itself, keep it within the country. Make the nation the principal benefactor. If you can establish colonies overseas, and then what the colonies produce, you can bring it back to your country and use it in your own to surplus your budget, then so be it. It is that much better. Okay, let's just move on a little bit. I've got a couple other absolutists I want to mention to for the end of the class period here, folks. And let's take ourselves to Germany. Actually, Germany is not a country at this time. We're going to have to wait until 1871 to form Germany. Germany was made up of a series of provinces, one of which was Brandenburg. Think in your mind here, folks, I don't want to go back to the map behind me, but think in your mind here where the area of Berlin is located, and I probably need to do that because you may not understand where Berlin is. So if we go to the area of where Germany is today, in fact, it's on the map here, it's in the purple here, which is called Brandenburg. Now, Brandenburg is right there where Berlin is located, and a little bit of the areas surrounding Berlin, such as where Potsdam is and so forth here. All right, now I'm going to have to go back to my camera here, and we'll pick up a name here. And the individual that's associated as the absolutist ruler from Brandenburg, Germany, Brandenburg, is that of Frederick William. They refer to him as the Great Elector. It would take me a few minutes to explain to you what an elector is, so we'll save the time for that. We might get a chance to do that at a later time here. If you remember from the last lecture that we had in Martin Luther, where I talked to you about Frederick the Wise was an elector, chosen by the people to serve to give the vote to the government anyway. But the individual here that's recognized as an absolutist ruler from this period of time, 1640, 1688, is that of Frederick William. Easy name to remember. I'm going to pronounce it in German for you. Friedrich Wilhelm, Frederick William. And it's an easy name to remember, but down the road in about another lecture or so, folks, you're going to have about 4 of these Frederick Williams, and it's going to be a hard chore to sort all those names out here. Frederick William I, Frederick William, well, whatever. But anyway, we'll get through that. All right, so anyway, now, under Frederick William, he joined forces with Poland and took this area of parts of Poland and parts of other areas. And now we're going to change the name from Brandenburg. It's now going to be known as Brandenburg, Prussia. So henceforth, this area around Berlin, we're going to call it Brandenburg, Prussia. And the absolutist ruler from that period there, of course, is Frederick William. Okay, let's move on. Now for the Austrians. The Austrians, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I want you to get close with this now. When we talk about Austria, think in your mind Habsburgs, and they're going to stay around a long time. They're still there, by the way. They're still present in Austria to this day. It was a huge empire, honestly was. They were Catholics. They were Catholics here. And for the Austrian Empire, it was made up of a number of small countries here. We had what we call the Czechs. This is Bohemia, Czechs, Bohemia, Moravia, Silesia. They speak German in Silesia. So it's not really difficult to get the Silesians to side with the Austrian Habsburgs. And then we had Hungary. Now, for Hungary, these are sometimes referred to as the Magyars. You heard this last semester with this. Now, this group here and this group here, that's where the challenge is here. They speak crazy language, and I'm telling you right now, if you go to Prague, and I told you this last semester, but if you go to Prague and Bohemia, you can stay there for a week and never understand a single word that is spoken. And it's a very challenging language. The same thing here, if you go to Budapest here in Hungary, you'll spend a week there and never understand a word. So when the Habsburgs took control of these areas here, there was great resistance that took place here from the Hungarians and great resistance that took place from the Czechs. They don't speak the language. Largely, they're not Catholic. The Protestant Reformation particularly affected people that were over here in Bohemia, where the Czechs are anyway. So it was difficult for the Austrians to maintain unity there. Now, in Austria, it's fine. You speak German. People are Germanic features there. But when you get to those areas, Bohemia and Hungary, it's different here. Okay, the principal Habsburg leader or absolutist leader, I'd like for you to recognize this individual, a person by the name of Leopold. You'll see Leopold II. This one is Leopold I from 1658 to 1705. All right, so we've addressed 3 of these absolutist leaders here, folks. First of all, we had Louis XIV, and then we had Frederick William, and now we have from the Habsburgs here, Leopold I. All right, so let's move on for a few minutes here. And I want to go to Russia. Let's go to Russia for a few seconds. And the absolutist leader that we have here in Russia is that of Peter I. Peter I, sometimes recognized as Peter the Great, one of my favorite individuals. He would rule over Russia from 1682 to 1725. I wrote his name out for you here in Cyrillic. This is his name here. Peter, you can impress your friends if you can remember this. This is a P. This is in Cyrillic. This is P, E, T, E, and where we say, I mentioned that to you first in an earlier time, where we get the symbol, it looks like a P, that is rho or R. So we get P-E-T-E-R. All right, Peter, that's written in Russian. Now, Peter was a Romanhof Romanhoff, and that's the way you pronounce this. We in America, we say Romanov, but if you go to Russia today, they pronounce it Romanhoff. And the founder of the Romanhoff family, this is like the Tudor family, York family, Lancaster family, was Mikhail Romanov. Look at it like Michael, Mikhail. If you're Mikhail in Russia, you'll probably be referred to as Misha. That's just like us saying like Mikey or Mike. Romanhoff. All right, a long series of families there. This was Rome, or I should say Russia had fallen on hard times with Ivan, the terrible Ivan IV. But now things are coming around a little bit, and Russia's getting a little bit more refined here. For Peter the Great, he took rule. At first it was co-ruling with his half-sister Sophia, but Peter gained the upper hand and actually had Sophia placed in a nunnery for the remainder of his life. But during that time, there was a rebellion in Russia. It came from what we call the Streltsy, and Peter took swift action there and actually hanged. They call it gibbeted because you leave the bodies hanging on the gallows there for weeks at a time, but hanged 1,200 of those Streltsy. The Streltsy were trying to return the half-sister of Peter to the throne, Sophia. And when Peter had these 1,200 gibbeted, he placed them in view of the nunnery so that Sophie could look out and see all of those people that had supported her just hanging there as they were gibbeted here. All right, for Peter, he also see, at this time, Russia was landlocked, and so Peter engaged in war with Sweden. And when he did so, they fought this battle at Poltava in 1709, and Peter came out successful with this, and he gained control of all of that area of the northern portion of where Russia is, the Balkans. And he created a new town. And this town, let's see if I have it down here, this new town was referred to as St. Petersburg. It's not named for Peter the Great. The town is named for St. Petersburg. And I wrote this name out for you, and this is in Russian here, folks. Whenever you see C's are pronounced as S. So S-A-N-K-T, Sank. And if we look at the second word here, this is Petersburg, P-E-T-E-R-B-U-R-G, St. Petersburg. You can kind of get comfortable with this if you spend a little time in Russia, you know. And when I was much younger than I am today, I took a summer's courses in Russian, so I got a little bit of knowledge on that. Here you have Moscow. That's the way we pronounce it, but if you go to Russia, it's Moskva. So M-O-S-K-V-A. All right, here. And if you want to see the way that Russia is spelled itself, this is R-O-S-S-I-Y-A. Russia. Okay, and anyway, and for when you visit there today, now Peter did not live here, but the place in which the royal palace was located, which was a winter palace, is known as the Hermitage. All right, now I think I'll wait until the next time to tell you a little bit more about Peter and the execution of his son Alexis here. So why don't we call it quits today here, folks? We're about 43 minutes into this lecture. That's a little bit longer than I normally like to go. And I'll admonish you again here, folks, a lot of material, and it's going to weigh on you heavily very quickly here, folks. You can't learn this material overnight, so you need to stay up with it. All right. Okay, thank you very much.